Our next joint presentation will be by Dr. Ramona Tascoe and Dr. James Garrett. So Dr. Ramona Tascoe is MD. She's a physician of international health, a physician and international health activist, and she's a Vet Striker founder. Dr. Tascoe is a 1970 graduate of San Francisco State University with a triple major in political science, sociology, and psychology. Dr. Tascoe participated in the historic 1968 BSU Third World Liberation Front strike. She served as the BSU office manager, was a member of the BSU Presidium, and was the first student arrested on November 6, 1968. And ultimately, she participated in the strike settlement negotiation in March 1969. She remains actively involved in the College of Ethnic Study. Dr. Tascoe is a graduate of UCSF, the School of Medicine, an ordained minister, and is president of the UCSF Medical Alumni Association. Her career spans 42 years, focused on marginalized populations through the world that experience acute disaster, long-term recovery, and require assistance for sustainable development in Africa, India, Haiti, and Sri Lanka. Here in the U.S., she's a social justice advocate specializing in education reform, integrative and environmental medicine, substance use disorder. I think it's important to do this. The dominant society discourages us from taking credit, but it'll take credit for just belching. You know what I mean? I just think it's important for us to go to the end of it. So anyhow, I'm a bad sister. So she's also involved in studies for opiate addiction and the elimination of health care deficit. Give a warm welcome.
My presentation, because I really hope that there is some path that you see in engaging me in the interactive. I want to say that I am a case study on what kind of students we would be addressing or hoping to receive into an ethnic studies program regardless of what age. And when I came to San Francisco State, I had no idea who I was other than a Negro girl who powdered her face, straightened her hair, curled her pelvis forward so it didn't hang too high, and I did everything I could to look like I was the cover of 16 magazine. And I wore pink lipstick. No. That was a joke, but it was true, right? The significance of that was when I came to State, I was met in the BSU office by the eminent Dr. James Garrett, who was Jimmy Garrett at the time, and he said, "Sister, you jaundiced yet?" And I didn't know what the heck that meant. What he wanted to know was, am I still wet behind the ears, or do I know who I am?
All right.
And I looked at him like I didn't know who I was, and he said, as if to say, obviously you don't, and I didn't. The significance of that is that the BSU was founded on principles that spoke to my heart. I entered San Francisco State knowing that I didn't know who I was, knowing that I was in search of who I was, and I was angry that I had to suppress racism all of my life. And I had to assimilate and pretend I was white when I wasn't. Even though Ancestry.com and DNA studies tell me that I got a little of that in me too. That was a joke too. How we doing on time? What I want to say to you is that the fertile ground that was set for us at San Francisco State, August 13, 1967, was fertile ground that was formed by a group of students who had stopped to analyze what we needed. And supported by Dr. Nathan Hare, who tag teamed with Dr. James Garrett in the writing of our history, the justification for Black studies, we came together under this umbrella, and I heard it said by one of our speakers, Dr. Teresa, who said, you know, purpose. What was it? So if I can, in respect for Dr. Nathan here, who's still with us, but as many of you know, his speech style is prohibitive for group presentations. But I have a quote directly from him that answers that. And it comes under the title, let me just tell you. Black curriculum at San Francisco State was initiated in the spring of 1966. The oppressed nature of the black community had become apparent to black students and educators, and for that reason, students in the Black Student Union moved together, meeting and destroying that oppression, and determined that oppression be eliminated, and that they have an aware curriculum. That curriculum ultimately realized that it needed to include community participation. The philosophy behind Black studies, this is a direct quote from Dr. Hare. We want education for all people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches men and women, I'm adding the women, their true history and their role in the present day society. We believe in an educational system that will give people a knowledge of self. If a man or woman does not have knowledge of self and their position in society and the world, then that person has little chance to relate to anything else. The civil rights movement of the South, in many ways, was a search for humanity within the confines of this racist society. Through this movement, we realized that there were certain systematic activities and institutions perpetuated by the society which were geared to shutting us out of the mainstream of society, such as big business, industry, unions, the welfare system, and the system of education, to name a few. Our response to these types of oppression was the seeking of effective methods of change, mass demonstrations, revolts, and questioning the value of existence in this society of racist institutions. Among Black college students, particularly those in predominantly white schools, there was a growing identification with the Black community and its problems. On San Francisco State campus, we began to question the relevance of our education in relationship to our needs and the needs of our community. I'm going to hold at this point, and I'm going to encourage you to give a little thought to the reflections of Dr. Garrett, and understand that it's a very rich discussion, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.